Okay, hi. We are now live on Facebook. It's good to see you all, and we have Robyn Harris. This is Creative Hearts Conversations, and today we're going to be talking about rewilding. If I can move to the side, Rewild, Reconnect, and Reroot. And this is going to be our upcoming workshop that we have on the 15th of November. It's a Tuesday, 2 till 4 p.m. And we will put the details of this coming soon. And we'd love for you to join us. But today, we just want to give you a little bit of a taster of how it might be to be in the workshops, but also just to have a conversation. Now, first of all, Robyn, hi. How are you
Hi,
today?
I'm good, thanks, Jemma. It's lovely to be here.
Thank you. Um, so one of the reasons I decided to do these conversations was because I feel like there's a lot of healers around. There's a lot of women specifically as well who are coming um, out of the kind of old ways of doing things and old ways of looking at things, and they're coming into a new way of being, which is more grounded, more rooted, and more in touch with nature and the ways of being perhaps that you would see in kind of um, even further back older days.
Yeah,
um,
we've kind of swung back around.
Yes, yeah. So could you talk a little bit about that and how you found your place within this healing journey?
I think, like a lot of people who've been on a healing journey, my story, what I share now, is very much my own journey and what I learned along the way, hoping that that then will be of support to other people as well. Because years ago, I went into burnout for the second time. I'm a bit of a slow learner. And I looked for support, and I kind of knew that I didn't want the traditional routes, but I didn't know what else to do. So partly I think it was to prove to myself and to other people so that I could say I knew it would work. I went to the doctor and I went for counseling. Neither of them worked. I got medication. That was a nightmare. It just did not work for me at all. And I went to counseling and just felt like it wasn't moving me forward. And it was only actually relatively recently where I was kind of mulling it all over and realized that the reason they didn't work for me was because I was looking for something that would support me, that would empower me, that would give me tools so that, you know what life's like. It's a bit messy, isn't it? It's not straightforward. It's not linear. It's always throwing curveballs. There's always something new to deal with and to navigate and negotiate. And unless I had the tools, I might be thrown all over again a few months, weeks, days down the line. So those two things weren't giving me that. I just felt like I was still stuck in victimhood, and victimhood was quite a theme for me. So when they didn't work, I thought, what else can I do? And I thought, if my life carries on the way it is right now, I don't want to be here. And how can I check out? What can I do? But I've had various people, close family member, people I know through a previous job, and a friend, a colleague, who have taken their own lives. And I didn't want to do that because it's just so messy for the people left behind. I understand why people do it, but it just didn't feel like something that I wanted to do. Other than I did want to check out. And so what could I do instead? How could I change my life? And I'm a bit of a bookworm. So I started reading, and I read Neil Donald Walsh, the Conversations with God trilogy, and lots of other stuff. But over the years, I've read Neil Donald Walsh. Gabor Mate was a massive one for me. Brene Brown, massive. I binge watch them on YouTube as well if I ever need that little boost, because life does throw you curveballs, and when you run your own business, it's tiring and it's lonely. So when I just need that little bit of a recharge, they're my go-to. Also Bessel van der Kolk, lots and it was really, I think, the pivotal thing for me was coming across the quote from Wayne Dyer that the moment we change the way we look at things, the things we look at change. And Bruce Lipton's, the moment you change the way you look at things, your whole chemistry, your body chemistry changes. And it was his teachings on epigenetics and knowing that we're not just dealt a hand, you know, those are your genes and that's your life mapped out for you. It's really so much about how those genes switch off and on, which relates to our stress, what stress we've got going on in our lives. And I knew from previous experience that when I got stressed, I got sick. And it might not have been massive things, because fortunately it wasn't going on for too many years of my life, but it was small, niggly, annoying things that makes life kind of really uncomfortable and unpleasant. So I didn't want to go back there, and I certainly didn't want it to develop into something further down the line, maybe like MS, cancer, Parkinson's, any of those neurological things. So yeah, that was my journey, and through all of that, I developed my acronym WILD, which you can see on my tag there, being wonder.
You know that one.
Intuition, exactly. Yeah, wonder, intuition, learning to love ourselves as we are, but also as we are not, and dancing with life. That life takes us on this dance. Another one that I read a lot of and followed was Abraham Hicks. And Abraham Hicks said something that really resonated with me and touched me on a very deep level. You all take all of this far too seriously. I was that uber serious child, and my life was grey. There was no colour, there was no joy, there was no excitement. It was just bland and boring because I was afraid to let in any of those emotions. My learning as a child was emotions are big, bad, and scary, and you don't want to go there. And things like anger, they are frightening for me, upsetting for other people, so you just push it all down, which I'm sure people will know is so unhealthy. But then I met with somebody when I was going through my own therapy along the way who had a song. And the song was, "You can't paint a sunrise without using orange and red." Orange and red being symbolic of anger. And that is so true. My life there was grey and bland and boring. And I didn't like it. I wasn't enjoying it. It was miserable. Why? Because when you suppress anger, you suppress the stuff you want as well. You suppress the joy. You can't experience one without the other. You have to allow them all, but find a way, because it is possible, that you can just be comfortable with them. Know that, this was another big one for me, that emotions are just energy in motion. We're not designed to stay in any one of them. They're just like clouds that drift on a sky. The blue sky is always there. The sunshine is always there behind the clouds. All we need to do is just, like the person lying in the field with their head, cradled in their arms behind their head as they lie on their back looking up at the sky, just letting the clouds all drift past. And that's something that I now love to do. And it is that grounding, isn't it? It's just lying there in nature, feeling her all around you, feeling that connection with the earth, and through that connection with yourself. So that's been my journey, and that's what I love sharing with people. Not a process, but just when we can have this perspective on life, it's not big, it's not scary anymore. I'm very much about taking people from fear and into love and hope, because when we have those, we have everything. When we lose them, it's a pretty rubbish place to be.
Yeah, definitely. And I think one of the hardest things is probably getting caught up in outside events. And if you run your own business, like you said, it can be very stressful. Or if, work responsibilities and things like that. So, what would you recommend to anyone right now who does feel like they don't have that stability, and they're seeing outside situations and they're going, well, none of this is stable, none of this is nourishing my soul? How can we come back to that place which you're talking about, where you are just watching it as if it's clouds going by, and it's not affecting your being, like, because you said about having, having anger is important and allowing sadness and all the emotions, but then also it's how to have that balance.
Absolutely. Yeah. And for the first step, I would say just breathe, become aware of your breath. You don't need to change it, but just be aware of it. And that is your essence, your life, your spirit. And just to notice as it comes in and goes out, and that it's bringing you all that life-giving oxygen, and it's bringing you energy, it's bringing you life. And in connecting with the breath, connecting with that essence, it can bring us back to center, bring us back to who we really are. So the reconnect that you've got there behind you.
Yeah.
And in doing that, it quite often brings us out of the headspace. We spend so much time in our headspace, and in our headspace, if you can imagine something like we are effectively a pillar when we stand up. If your top is heavy, if you're top heavy, you aren't stable. You're likely to tip and fall over. So when you're fully in your headspace, it's like your center of gravity on an energetic level is all up here. And it's then off balance, very easy to topple it. Whereas if you can come back down into your body, you lower your center of gravity. And we have three brains, probably at least three brains: the head brain, the heart brain, and the gut brain. Unfortunately, in our society, we're often taught to put all of our reliance on our head brain. Be very analytical, think everything through, work it all out from your head. There's a lot of emphasis placed on intelligence and IQ and your mental abilities. But then we forget, we disconnect from our heart and our gut, from our intuition, from our deep inner wisdom and our knowing. And that throws us off balance. When we can just breathe and just sit in the moment, then that helps to reconnect with those parts of ourselves and to lower that center of gravity and to bring us back down into our bodies and to just feel centered and grounded again. And in doing that, it takes us out of the hamster wheel where we don't have clarity. Everything's just spinning. And like we were talking before we went live about the current situation and the government and the cost of living. And here in the UK, we're going into winter. What's going to happen? Fuel shortages, electricity cuts. How's that going to impact on us? And the more you think about it, the more you realize, but I can't do that and I can't access that. And I was thinking today, I was chatting with somebody on a networking group. We can't have fridges. We can have them, but fridges won't work in a power cut. What's going to happen in the shops and what's going to happen with all our food? And you start to just spin off into some horrendous nightmare. Whereas if we just breathe and come back to center, people lived without fridges for years. When I was a baby, my mum didn't have a fridge. We find other ways. We can do this, but not when our head is in a spin, because we just can't see. There's a saying of being blinded by panic, and it's so true. When we're in panic, we're like blinkered. We can't see all the options and opportunities and potentials that are there, but we're just so panicked, we miss them. But when we breathe and because when you breathe from the belly, rather than the panicked breath from up in the top of your chest, it sends a feedback loop to the body. I'm safe, all is well, it's okay, it's going to be okay. Breathing from the top part is sending the panic feedback loop. Just something's wrong, panic now. So breathing slowly, deeply, but not too deeply, just comfortably deeply. And there are lots of breathing exercises that you can find on YouTube or just Google search them. Doing that will really, really be hugely supportive and just give you the space that you need to rewild, reconnect, reroot, feel that stability again, rather than that you're just constantly toppling from one side to another.
Do you think we had almost an addiction to fear and panic, because you spoke a bit about Gabor Mate, and he works a lot with addictions. And yeah, one of the things I notice within myself, but also with other people and the news, and I'm not saying that it's not important to point out what's going wrong. I think that's actually very important. I think Gabor Mate talks about, um, I don't know how he phrases it, something like being positive, uh, talking about the negative is positive, as in, if you have something wrong with your body, just ignoring it is not going to make it better.
No.
But then at the same time, if you panic, that's not going to make it better either.
It's a balancing act, isn't it? Like life is a balancing act. But yes, I definitely think that when we get into fear, and probably most of us have, spend quite a bit of time there, particularly with what's going on at the moment. And we're getting all these messages of fear through social media, through the news, from the government. It's everywhere. It's wall to wall fear messages. So another thing to do is to step back from that, step away from social media, step away from the news. And you were talking about the stuff that doesn't feed your soul. So for me, it's about listening to our body, tuning in. How does this make me feel? Does it feel like I'm having to protect myself, like I'm being squeezed smaller? Or does it feel like expansive and joyful and possibility and potential? Do I feel uplifted? Do I feel like my resources are being taken from me? I'm depleted in some way. So anything that depletes you, take time out from that, take big time out from that, and look for the stuff that builds you up, that nourishes you. Spending time with friends, what you read. Like I say, I binge watch but Gabor Mate, Brene Brown. I read their works as well, their books, or anything I can find that just helps me to feel potential and possibility, and stronger again, refreshed, recharged. So the people we spend time with, what we read, what podcasts we listen to, what we watch on telly, what radio channels we've got on, all of that stuff. And it might not sound like much, but it's the little things that really make such a difference. But going back to what you were asking about fear, I think when we spend time in fear, it triggers our adrenal glands and our cortisol. All of these hormones are rushing around in our bodies. And I think there is an addiction to that. And then we go into adrenal fatigue and we get ill. And adrenaline and cortisol, they're very similar to a lot of, they have a similar impact to drugs that people take. And sugar as well, all these things that just add one thing on top of another, on top of another, and they feed that fear place. Sugar being the fast, quick fix that we need when we're in stress, when we're in fight or flight. So we grab something that's got caffeine in it to give us energy. We grab sugar, which is instant energy, but then we have the peaks and troughs. And, it just, the catalogue of why that's unhealthy goes on, but sugar is addictive. So we're feeding that all of the time unless we start to get conscious. So getting conscious is another big thing for me. But then finding, how do you deal with the uncomfortable emotions? Because we spend so much time pushing them down because we don't want to feel them. We don't want to be conscious of them. But yes, when we get into that fear cycle, we get into that hamster wheel in the brain. We can't see a way out. We can't see a way to stop the spinning. We get that adrenaline and cortisol. That means we need more just to have energy, just to keep going, to be in fight or flight. And it just becomes that cycle. So using the breath, taking time out, all of these things help to interrupt that cycle and help to create something new. And I can't remember who it was, about when we want to create a new habit, don't focus on getting rid of the old, because you're pushing against something which will just push back. Instead, shift your focus and just start focusing on the thing you want to create, being the change, as Gandhi said. So that's something else that I would say to do. To what is it that you want? And we need to get pretty clear on that, and vision boarding and stuff can be great. So what is it you want? And then look for those little things, as Abraham Hicks would have said, what makes you feel a little bit better? It doesn't matter if it's only a tiny little bit. Just keep leaning into that, and then a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more, and not looking at the stuff you don't want. Like you say, it's there. I'm not talking about pushing it under the carpet. I'm just talking about once you're aware of what it is, that Abraham Hicks talks about, that is only there so that you are aware of what you do want. And as soon as you're aware of what you do want, you can drop that like a hot potato, shift your focus, and just focus on the stuff that you're now clear on that you want.
Yeah. I'm just seeing if there's any comments. Siobhan said hi. So I want to also speak a little bit about the Words of the Wise book that Siobhan has put together for us, and that's why we're here. That's why we know each other, because we're connecting through this book. So just to give you a little bit of background, we are going to be part of a book called Words of the Wise, and there's going to be other women in that book as well who've written chapters and poetry and just little wise nuggets so that you can learn from that, and that's coming out soon. So just talk to me a little bit, or talk to us a little bit about why you wanted to be a part of the book, and what was your inspiration for your chapter?
I saw a post on Facebook, and it talked about it being Words of the Wise, and there's a kind of a tagline, wisdom from awakening journeys, and that spoke to me. And as I've just been talking about my own journey towards awakening consciousness, conscious living, and how important I feel that is, because I feel that's where we find our well-being, we find our joy, we find who we are, we reconnect with our own nature. And in doing that, we each have our own specific lights that I think, and wisdom and all of that sort of thing, that I think are so right for the time in which we're living. And you look around, as we talked about, what's going on with the government and everything at the moment, we're still kind of teetering on the edge of a pandemic. We need all the lights that we can get right now. But also going through that pandemic and the lockdown and so on, I saw it as an invitation from the universe to get conscious, to really choose, because we have this power to choose. What do we want? What world do we want to be creating? And part of my thing, my acronym is WILD, and my focus is working with people, but I work with animals too. And I think that we have to, I don't like have to, sorry, musts, oughts, shoulds, delete from my vocabulary. But I feel that it's such an important time now to realize that our human well-being is dependent on the animals and nature, our whole interdependent, interconnected ecosystem being healthy, being balanced, being well. When that is the case, we will be well naturally. When we are not well, they are not well. So for me, it's focusing on all of these things, and then we can bring those unique wisdoms, our unique, each individual person, what they bring. We give it space, we give it the ability of expression. And that's what this book kind of was an expression of, a representation of, a step towards for me. And that was why it spoke to me. And in that post on Facebook, it just asked for the piece to be contributed. And I just sat down and I just typed. And it felt like it was kind of channeled. It's not something that I really do, but it was something. I worked with somebody years ago, and she talked about moving away from fear and closer to love. And so my piece really is about love. It's about a message from, it turns out, being our higher self. It's written as a letter, written to each and every one, because so often, like I said, we are our own worst enemy. We beat ourselves up. We're so hard on ourselves. we have such high expectations of ourselves, and yet we don't engage in self-care. We quite often put other people first. So this was as a letter to say, you are amazing. You really are beautiful, no matter who you are, what you look like, doesn't matter. You're beautiful. You're beautiful just because you're here. You are valid and important and precious and special just because you're here. Because if you weren't needed, you wouldn't be here. The universe, if you think of all the generations and all of the interweavings of genetics and timelines and everything that it took to get you here as an individual, wow, that's precious, that's special. And that's what you bring. You bring all of that history, all of that wisdom, and you might not feel very connected to it right now, but it's there. And I want to offer space to people to find that again, to believe that it's there, to reconnect with it, because then you can share it. And wow, what a gift that's going to be to the world.
Yes.
I think we've all got that. So
Yes. And one of the reasons why I always I support people in finding their voice. And one of the things that bothers me about kind of the rhetoric we're often taught is that we're not powerful. There's people out there that have the power, and we should be angry at them for not giving us the power. But the truth is that we are all powerful, because we affect people every day, and every single choice that we make has an impact on how everybody else treats each other. So we are the light, we are the ones that are going to bring forward a new way of being if we choose, and if we use our voices to do that.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be going out and standing on a soapbox on Hyde Park Corner or anything. It is, like you say, just the choices, even the little choices that you make every single day. And if you think about being a parent, oh my goodness, how much you influence people, the little people, the important ones who are coming on to be the next generation, or a teacher, or anybody in that role, because you never know. This is another thing that I came across, and it made me, oh gosh, you never know who's looking up to you. It might be somebody that you are in a physical space with, your family, your work colleagues. It might be somebody on social media. And so if we can share things that uplift people, things that encourage people, things that support people, things that are of uplift and recharging and encouraging and motivating, rather than, like you say, the anger messages. And for me, there's a lot of talk, it seems, everywhere at the moment about narcissists, which to me is just, it's part of the anger thing. And then you're still giving your power away. Whereas if we can go, well, they may have narcissistic behavior, but I can choose what I do around that. And we think quite often, like you say, we think we don't have a choice, but maybe this is something that's not so commonly talked about in the generation now, but going back a few years, Nelson Mandela being in isolation, and yet he came out so well balanced, and he, wrote books and talked about his time in isolation, whereas he wasn't being angry, because he knew that being angry was taking his power away. He was probably angry at the treatment that he had, but he wasn't allowing that to take away from his life. So anger is not wrong, but it's how we use our anger and where we direct our anger and where we know that we have or haven't control. So why throw energy at stuff we don't have control over?
It's like the serenity prayer, isn't it?
Yes, I grew up with that. My mum had that on
serenity to accept the things I cannot change, and the courage to change the things I can.
Yeah, and the wisdom to know the difference.
Yeah.
Very much so. Because we do have so much power. The only thing we have power over is ourselves and our choices, but that's huge. And what we allow in our lives and how we choose to engage with things. So even if you're in a situation which is hideous, you can choose how you respond. Because I was in a situation with a boss who was very bullying, and it just made me feel like that, just no good. Somebody asked me one day how I was feeling, and I said, I feel like dirt under somebody's shoe. I didn't realize I had the choice to leave, because I was so afraid, if I leave, where's my income? You know, stepping out of a job that's pretty well paid, reasonably secure, into nothing. But when we are grounded and when we aren't blinded by panic, we can see other options because they're there. And even just sitting in that situation of feeling so bullied and realizing, I don't have to allow that. I can stand up for myself, even if I don't speak back to him, if I don't tell him, I can sit in my own corner and know that I'm worth something. And that changes everything. Like Bruce Lipton says, it changes the chemistry of your body, but it changes what you can see. Because then you start to see the opportunities and you start to see the support that is there that maybe before, when you were just in such a shut down space, you didn't know.
Yeah, we've just had a question from Jen just saying that she's not able to make the workshop, and will there be another chance? So we are going to have a replay option as well, so you can get the workshop and watch it afterwards. So we'll be recording it, and you can also send in any questions that you have for us. So if you get the workshop and you're not able to attend, you can just send us your questions and we'll answer them on the call, so that you are a part of it, so that it doesn't feel like you're just watching something that, oh well, they participated in this. But obviously if you get it after as well, you can watch the replay and message us, you know, with your feedback, and say if you have any questions, and then so that you're still supported. Also, we have a few other workshops. So this is all part of the Creative Hearts conversations with Words of the Wise, women from Words of the Wise. So it's actually a series of workshops. So it's not just this one, but there'll also be one with Audrey Scully on Saturday the 26th of November, and then there's another one with Rachel Blemen on Thursday the 15th of December, and we'll also be doing lives like we have as well, which I'll be putting up the dates for as well. So there's plenty for you to get involved in, and I'm sure Robyn has some more offers as well. So just tell us a little bit about your business. Equinity. That's
yeah,
it.
yeah. So the name, it is a bit odd, and I know that people struggle with knowing how to pronounce it.
I love it though. I love the name.
But I think it helps to know where it comes from. So it's a fusion of equilibrium, balance, and energy. Because as we've been talking about, when we can get our energies back into balance, then that supports us in being well and in being able to live our fullest, best, most wonderful life. And what I do, I work one-to-one with people, I run workshops, and I just love the workshops, you know, getting to really interact with people face to face. That's what I love to do, but I do them online as well. So if people are at a distance or whatever, then yeah, I'm happy to do those online as well. But one of my favorites is called Enjoy Your Life the Wild Way. How can we bring in joy into our life, particularly when we're maybe feeling that we're just at a really low ebb, that life is grey and miserable? I was there. I was so there. And you know, to be able to move from that place to where I am now is literally transformational. So that's what I want to share with people, the hope, the belief, because everything that we believe has such an impact on how we live our lives. And if we believe we can't change, we probably won't. But if we believe even just a tiny little glimmer of light that we can change, then it begins to open up a whole new world. And let me tell you, if I can change my life like that, it's totally possible. You can do it. Something else that I do is a 3-day workshop, which is all around how do we get a deeper understanding of what's going on in our bodies. We have a system of sick care, really, in the UK and most places in the world, where we look at negative symptoms. We look at pain and symptoms of dis-ease, and we think the body's going wrong, it's making a mistake, maybe even that it's attacking itself. And we then try to eradicate those symptoms. But for me, it's at looking, why do I feel those things? What's happening in my body that's manifesting as this dis-ease? But dis-ease, the symptoms that we experience, all they are messages. They're communication from our body telling us, this is supporting me, this isn't. It doesn't have language, doesn't speak. So this is the communication that it has, how we feel physically, emotionally, cognitively. But when we unpick all of that, we can start to understand what's going on, and then we can turn it around. And that's where the magic lies. And that's called meta consciousness, because it's an overarching consciousness of everything that's going on, and how we can use that amazing information to support ourselves, to create the life of greater well-being. And when we go through that journey, it's the learning that we get. So for me, I had this done for myself back in the day, and I had IBS, I had migraines, I had eczema, all those little niggly but really uncomfortable things. And the practitioner that I went to see, he wrote a report, and when I read that report, it was eye-opening. He was able to tell me the stuff that I couldn't put into words myself about the traumas, not the big T traumas, but the continuous trauma that I'd had as a child that made me feel so insecure and small and fearful, and that was then still in the driving seat of my life, still living from that constant alertness and fear that was making me sick. But when he put it down on paper and I was able to see that and then see it in myself, that gave me awareness, which helped me to make change. Because when you're not looking at it and it's not there, la, 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 you can't do anything about it. But when you see it and you own it, and then you say, I want to change this. And you have somebody there who can hold your hand and help you to find the way to change it. And not only change it, but radically transform it and create. It's like creating a beautiful garden out of a compost heap. You know, we need the compost, but we can grow beautiful flowers in it. We can make our garden just glowing and abundant and beautiful.
Absolutely. And it's reminding me of the Gabor Mate book, When the Body Says No.
Yeah.
So
alignment.
It's like sometimes we don't want to accept that our minds are connected to our bodies. I mean, this just blows my mind, and sometimes I'm a little bit short with people around it, because for me it's just common sense. Like it makes zero sense for me to look at the body without looking at the mind. That doesn't make any sense, because we're not separate. It's like, if you know, it's imagining that the leaves are not part of the tree. It's as daft as that, you know, or that the roots are not part of the tree.
It is, but that's how we've
the roots don't contribute
and taught. Yeah.
And it
in
really,
such a Newtonian mechanical way of looking.
Yeah, but then I suppose I have to have compassion for people that are not, but then that sounds patronizing if I say it like that. But it's like, it's understanding, how did we get here?
Yeah.
We got here because nobody would think like this if they were born in a tribal environment where they're constantly with nature.
None of us come in thinking like this.
No, we're taught it, and I think that's where the empathy has to come in. Because I always thought, well, people should have empathy for me because you know, because I wanted people to understand my emotions and understand my mental health, and then I wrote a song actually called Empathy, and I realized, wow, I have to have empathy for these people that are not able to hold space for emotions, because how sad is that?
But going back to Gabor Mate, and he talks about there isn't a cancer personality, there isn't an MS personality. What there is learnt fears and protective schema, mechanisms, practices, behaviors that lead to that sickness because we haven't been addressing the stresses that the fears have been causing us and the way that those fears have caused us to change inside. And if you think of all the people in the world, each with their individual traumas and very subjective traumas, so an outsider might not think that's traumatic at all, but the person themselves, they experience it as trauma and it puts them into fear, and their whole way of interacting with the world changes to protect them from that fear. It's just a protective mechanism, which unfortunately goes a little bit unbalanced because it isn't addressed and it carries so much fear and stress, so they get ill. But that's where we all are. We've been taught this Newtonian way, and no child, like you say, you had all these emotions and you wanted empathy. Of course you did. That's natural and normal. But what happens? We get shut down. You shouldn't feel that way. And I remember my dad telling me off because I cried at a film when I was a tiny little child. I cried at a film, it was Lassie Come Home. And I find it very emotional and moving and upsetting. This dog, dogs, I was a lover of dogs. And we had a dog, and this dog was so starved and all the rest of it. It was, I just felt for this dog. I had such empathy for this dog that I cried. And my dad was basically, stop crying or I'll give you something to cry about. And why are you feeling so upset? It's just a film. So I learned to shut that down. And you shut down empathy, you shut down emotion, you shut down feelings. But if we're all in that situation and we're just trying to survive, and we live in a society that says we are Newtonian beings, if you have a pain in your knee, you just look at the knee. You don't look at the fact that your knee is part of your body, which lives in an environment which might be stressful. we look at this now and we laugh because how could you possibly think that way?
It's crazy, but people will argue, even to this day, that it's somehow a ridiculous way of thinking to think of things in wholeness rather than separation. And that's something else I wanted to ask you about, is this concept of wholeness and the opposite contrast of separation. So even if we think about things like, so I could be looking at political leaders or things going on in society, and I can think, well, they're doing it wrong, or they're not empathic enough, or they're not looking at people's needs. But then aren't they also part of the whole? So how do we manage that? How do we hold empathy for everyone, but also recognize where the system might have not be supporting everyone?
And I think we do that by doing it for ourselves. And something that I've learned from people like Gabor Mate with his compassionate inquiry, and from others who talk about just being open and curious and being able to hold the fact that we have all of these crazy contrasts and things that look like, well, you can't have that if you have that, because they're mutually as crazy. But we have cognitive dissonance where you can hold different thoughts and beliefs and they don't match up, but we still manage to hold them. So, we as beings, human beings, maybe even all beings, our hearts are big enough. This was something that was massive for me to learn. I can feel a range of intense emotions that you might think, how
Mm-hmm.
can you feel love and hate at the same time? Well, you can. I didn't really know that I had permission to do that I could feel all of these things, even if they seem contradictory. I can hold them all within me. I'm not, I'm not the size of a mountain or something. I'm just a person. And yet I can hold all of these things within me. I can hold lots of different beliefs, and they might be contradictory beliefs. We do this. This is just part of what it is to be human, and it's okay. But when we do it consciously, we can know, rather than fighting inside of ourselves, where how can I believe that, and this doesn't make sense, and it's all wrong, rather than thinking it's wrong, just, oh, wow, I can do that. But then if I'm conscious about it, I can explore each one, and I can choose which one is appropriate for which moment. But then also, it's like you say, when I realize that I want empathy, but that means that I need to be empathic for other people. Obviously, there has to be a line somewhere. I can't just step into another person's shoes and expect them to step into mine, or be empathic for everybody all of the time. I need my boundaries, and they need to be pretty strong, so that I know where I stop and you start, and all of that kind of stuff. But I think when we can be compassionate and conscious for ourselves, and that understanding that when I want self-care and for myself, and I want, this is another thing that really annoys me, rights. If I'm going to demand my rights, well, what about everybody else's rights, and whose rights trump anybody else's? Because we're never going to win that way, because there are always rights that are going to conflict, and then you just can't always say, well, that person's rights are bigger in this situation, because sometimes it's not that clear cut. But if I want to be able to have self-care, and I want compassion, and I want empathy, and I want to be allowed to express myself, then I can do that even better when I allow it for other people too. Mm-hmm. But to do that, I need to be fairly grounded, so that I'm, solid in who I am. I have my boundaries. I know what is me and what is you, what is other, so that they don't blend too much. I can change perspectives, but at the same time, I know what I believe, and I know what is right for me, what's a good fit for me, but I don't have to impose that on anybody else. So I think it's that balancing act. But to do that, we need to be pretty solid in our own balancing. That's another thing. I don't say that it's balanced, because I think, like, life is always throwing the curveballs. It's a verb, it's not a noun. It's a practice. And I think sometimes we expect that, oh, that's it, I should be done now, I've sorted that particular issue of my life, it's never going to come around again. And then when it does, we beat ourselves up. It's just another layer. And to me, it's a reason to celebrate, because, whoa, I'm ready for something further. I'm growing. And that's balancing, is that continual just checking in. How am I doing? Like the person on the wire with the pole.
Yeah.
Keeping readjusting. But it can be a game. It's part of the dance. It's not onerous if we can, believe that it's not onerous. Hold that
so we've had another question about the cost of the workshops. So the full price is £36, but we've got an early bird offer for £28. So if you do want to come to the workshop, make sure you get your tickets early so that you can get that discount. And also, if you want to come to all 3 workshops, like I said, there will be replays, so you don't have to make them live. You can get an even further discount. So it works out at £25 per session. So it's £75 if you get all of the workshops together. So that's for the workshops. Now, one of the things I'm really sort of passionate about is encouraging healers to charge for their work and to value themselves, and also recognizing that we are giving a service. So it is that balancing act once again of, you know, how hard it can be to charge for your work sometimes, because we all want to give everything for free, but at the same time, you know, we have to live.
And it's just an exchange of energy.
Mm,
Money is just another form of energy. And it's not, for me, it's not thinking about it as a payment for a service so much as an investment.
mm,
And I have done Reiki, and there is the school of thought within Reiki that you should charge, because then people will value what they're receiving.
yes.
If you get something for nothing, that's kind of the value you put on it. But if you invest in it, then you see that it really is worth.
Yes.
And maybe, you know, it might be worth more than you're paying, depending on what you're doing and what you're
Yeah. I
getting for
mean,
your
this is
investment. But
definitely worth more than what we're charging, in my opinion, because I mean, I've done hundreds of courses and workshops, and I'm sure you have as well. So we've invested a lot of money and time into what we're offering now at a fraction of the price. But also it's kind of, I mean, I spoke about this in a recent video on creating abundance. And the more we can value something that we're going to, the more we value the people as well. Because we always think, you know, when we're trying to devalue something, we're just devaluing ourselves.
yeah,
Unless, of course, if you really are struggling financially, of course, reach out to us because we don't want to not have anyone receive, you know, what we're giving. But at the same time, it's about remembering not to take advantage of people and to treat people equally and fairly, and to trust that when you're receiving um the the workshop, it's like you're creating a, not only for yourself, you're also creating the future for everybody else, because what you're receiving is something that you can carry on forward. You know, I get people who come to just one workshop and then they're able to, I had someone come to my last workshop actually, and they created a piece of art straight away after, and that brought so much joy to her. And then it's like you're releasing into the world this energy, this reconnection, this rewilding, and you're helping everybody else by investing in yourself.
and from that perspective, it's priceless.
Yeah.
And like you say, you can go to a workshop and something radical and deep shifts, and your whole life shifts forever. So
Mm,
you're carrying the value of what you learned or you received at that
yeah.
workshop with you always. And you know, that for me, some of the shifts have been around being able to leave my job, so that's massive.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had clients as well leave their job but then get another one,
Well,
and like
exactly. Yeah.
it's shifted their entire life. It really is that.
Yeah.
It's it is life shift, and I wouldn't just say that if, you know, if it hadn't happened, if I just had some clients and it hadn't really made an impact, I wouldn't be able to say truthfully that
Yeah.
I had impacted people's lives. But I do know now, like, that it does.
It
I
does.
don't even know how it happens. It just,
But we don't need to know how. We know in the sense that we know it's energetic,
yeah.
and we know that energy is everything. Vibration, it's so important. You know, everything that you do, this is why consciousness is so important to me, that when we are conscious and we're making those conscious decisions and choices and
Mm,
listening to our body and tuning in consciously to how does it feel? Does it feel uplifting? Does it feel like it's depleting me? Steering away from the stuff that depletes and spending more time choosing the things that uplift us. And that can be a real challenge because we're so busy and there are
yeah.
so many things placed on us. But to me, it's like the story in the Bible of the Pharaoh making the Hebrews go out and get straw for their bricks on top of everything else. It was to keep them busy. And you were talking about people who maybe don't, you know, they're not currently in work, so they don't have a lot of money. And to me,
Mm,
that's like the Bible story of the widow who put her mite in to the collection box in the synagogue. it's about giving from what we've got. So that was a huge proportion of what she had. For somebody else who's rich, thousands of pounds might not mean anything. So I think it's about looking at what you can invest, what's of value to you, and going for it, choosing that and putting what you've got, even if that's just energy, it's not financial energy, but investing in your self-care, investing in becoming conscious, grounding yourself, rooting yourself, reconnecting, finding out who you really are and following that, whatever way works for you. And then, you create this massive, wonderful shift that is transformational, and your life will feel so different and so much better for it.
Ah, that just made me cry, like that
Oh.
story. It's so true. Like when people give, there's a book I've read called Soul of Money.
Mm.
Um, I can't remember who it's by, but I've got it on the shelf somewhere. But there's a story about how their charity accepted money off less money from people who had less, and then they didn't accept a really huge donation from someone that had lots of money because the energy wasn't right. So it's not just about giving loads because you feel you have to.
No.
It's like it's because when you give of what you have and you know that it's going to somewhere where you value that person, or you value that business, or you value the what you're receiving, then that can really, really help. I mean, I just did a donation for my music, which is still going if you want to donate to my music as well, so that I can pay anyone that's a part of my videos if they want to be paid. Again, it's kind of like it's about energy exchange. It's about giving to your community, and we're part of your community. If you're on Facebook, we're all part of a community on Facebook, and especially if you're interested in these consciousness waking up. I don't think we can wake up if we don't address um money, because it's a part of waking up. It's part of seeing, okay, who needs this? What can I give? How can I serve? How can I receive? And
It's
it's about
such a
that
huge part of
exchange.
our life, isn't it?
Yeah.
Mm.
And it's not about the actual thing itself. It's more about how we treat people and how we value people. And you know, um, we always make sure that we give something first as well. Like we're doing this live right now so that you can experience what we're doing. And then if you want to carry on that further and you want to be part of the community as well, because you'll meet other people, get to ask us your questions, and it becomes more personal and more you'll receive more, if that makes sense, because you've invested in that time.
And speaking about community,
Mm,
there is the healing of just being in a community of like-minded people. It's the healing of connection. And that's where a lot of people believe that the healing that's coming in now is going
yeah,
to be experienced in community. And it's like Brene Brown talks about shame. Shame is such a huge, and Gabor Mate talks about it too, but Brene is a shame researcher. And she says that shame needs three things. I'm not sure if I'll remember them all, but it needs silence so we don't talk about it.
yeah,
It needs something else, and vulnerability, and all of that stuff that people can like add to your shame and make you feel it more deeply. But what shame can't survive in is when somebody connects with you, here the empathy that you talked about. So she says, when somebody says, yes, me too,
yeah,
that takes away the shame, because, oh, thank God I'm not alone. Shame is so isolating, and we don't want to share. We don't want anybody to see or to know our shame. So when we can share with a trusted, it needs to be a trusted person, or somebody that we know is going to deal with our shame very gently and compassionately, when we can say out loud our shame, and they go, Yeah, me too. And you
Mm.
suddenly feel like I'm not alone. Somebody else still loves me, still accepts me just for who I am, warts and all. And they have given me the gift of sharing that they have that same issue.
Yeah.
It takes away the shame. The shame just melts. So that community thing is big. It's huge. It's transformational because it shifts the energy, and it shifts the energy for everybody. And there's the thing of the sum being greater than, or the whole being greater than the sum of the parts. So if you ever meditate in a group, it's so much
Much
more,
more powerful, yeah.
yeah, than if you meditate on your own.
That's what I've really found in the workshops that I've done so far. It's almost like this energy comes about because of that connection and community. And I know that some of the people that have been coming for a while, they will come along just because they want to be in the energy. They don't even care what the topic is. It's like, oh, there's a workshop, I'm coming along because they want to be in that frequency. They want to be in the energy and that community. And it's sometimes that's all you need. Sometimes all you need is just to be around people that get it and understand that, yeah, this is hard and we're all going through it and we're all trying to work out how the best way to do it is. But the thing is the you know, there's tools that can guide you through this, and you don't have to do it on your own. You don't have to struggle and try and figure it all out by yourself. That's the benefit of doing these kind of workshops. Anything that you can do, going to a yoga class or going to a Reiki session, or anything that you can do to have that sense of connection and healing and tap into the energy.
And also, when we come together in community, we have more heads with more ideas.
Mm,
And there will be people who have traveled a particular part of the journey before you, and you'll have traveled a part before them. So there are ideas and um, strategies and things that you can learn from each other. But like you say, a lot of it is just in that energy because you feel lifted and supported by that energy.
yeah.
And again, it's that thing of possibility just opens up just because you're in the energy.
It's so true. Sometimes even just going to something, I'll have an idea after, and it's like then I'll just go and do something just because I've just joined a group, and then suddenly inspiration comes and I'm like, oh, I know now what to do about this thing that I've been struggling with for however long before. So it actually can, yeah, really, really benefit um in so many ways, you
Yeah.
know. Okay, so I think we're near the end now. But I just want to thank you so much for coming on and having this conversation. And I'll put the replay on YouTube. So if you're watching the replay on YouTube, just type in your comments. Let us know how it felt for you, what insights came up, and if you want to join us on the 15th of November, 2 till 4 p.m. We'll drop the link below so that you can join. Make sure you get your early bird ticket if you can. If you're watching this after, don't worry about it. You can still get your tickets, but just let us know. Be in touch, and Rewild, Reconnect, and Reroot. So thank you, Robyn. Have you got any final words for us, for anyone that's listening?
I don't know. Just tune in to your body,
Yeah.
reconnect, and listen. What is it asking for from you today? How might you just do a little bit of self care just for you? And the self care that I mean is the stuff that literally is just for you. It's not for anybody else. It's not to do anything, achieve anything other than just be a precious, special little moment just for you. How might you bring that in today and every day?
All right. Thank you, Robyn. And make
Gemma,
sure you follow her page on Facebook. I'll drop all the links below, and we'll see you soon on the 15th of November. Bye.
bye.